Good afternoon, class. This is Mr. Sauce. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today. We are going to go forward anyway. We are in Chapter 2, and we can't fall behind, so we need to make sure that we are keeping up with our studies. We're going to turn to page 73. You'll notice on the video that I'll always have the page listed right at the top and center in case you get lost. On page 73, we're starting Chapter 2, Section 1, which is known as classifying angles. Some of the important vocabulary words are listed to your right. We'll be talking about these throughout the lesson and throughout the chapter as well. To begin with, we're going to start with scanning the lesson and write the definitions of a right angle and a straight angle. This is really just a review. I think most of you know what a right angle is. That's a 90-degree angle. It looks, generally speaking, a lot like this. The corner of a square is a good example. It's called a right angle. Our other definition here is a straight angle, and that's 180 degrees. And that really, if you just think about a straight line, straight lines are always measured to be 180 degrees. Below the vocabulary startup, talk about a very, very important word called vertex. This word is typically how we name angles. We name the angle by whatever the vertex is named. Sometimes we use 3 or more points to name an angle. However, the vertex is always in the middle when we name those angles. We'll get to that a little later. Right now, we're just going to review the types of angles we're going to talk about. We already talked about a right angle, and if you want to draw that on the clock, it should look a little something like this, almost looking like it's 3 o'clock. Less than 90 degrees, these are known as acute angles. So anywhere in this general area, maybe 1, 2 o'clock, or anywhere in between. Greater than 90, these are known as obtuse angles. So here we're going to create an angle that's greater than 90. Now notice what I did here was I did the angle a little backwards. We're looking here, this angle right here, it's a little greater than 90 degrees. That's going to be an obtuse angle. And then a straight angle, just like pointing to 6 o'clock, it's just going to be our straight line. Below our real world link, if you look at the angle formed by this bicycle ramp, you know, very, very important when you're calculating things like making bicycle or skateboard ramps to know how the angles work. If you don't make an angle that works out, make it too great or too small, disaster could result. So there's another example where we do use math every day. This is an acute angle that's being formed. We can tell that's definitely less than 90 degrees. I mean, you can kind of picture if it was greater than 90 degrees, it probably wouldn't be a very, very good ramp. When estimating measure of the angle, you know, we have not used our protractors yet, so estimating might be a little difficult right now. However, I can tell that it's less than 90. Like we said, it's probably less than 45 degrees. You know, if you kind of draw a picture of what a 90-degree angle looks like, and you think about half of 90, which is 45. Think about this being a 45-degree angle. I'd say that even looks a little less than that. So, you know, maybe anywhere between 20 and 40 degrees. I know we're a little, that's a large margin of error, but because we haven't gotten to the point where we're estimating the size of these angles, we're not going to worry about that just yet. Let's turn to page 74 now. This is actually very, very important vocabulary review. We are going to name and identify angles, and this is a very big part of this unit. 2 angles are vertical if they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of 2 lines, and I really like to think of these known as opposite angles. You know, it helps you kind of picture how they look. Vertical, you know, is a word that means, you know, going up and down typically, and it's hard to look at an intersection of 2 angles and always use the word vertical to refer to 2 angles that are opposite from each other as being vertical. You know, just for an example, 1 and 3. If you look at angle 1 here and angle 3, these are vertical angles. However, you know, they're not straight up and down. They're across from each other. That's why I like to call these opposite angles as opposed to vertical. So just think about what opposite means. 1 and 3 are opposite of each other, just as 2 and 4 are opposite from one another. These are always congruent. Okay, opposite angles are always congruent. That helps us out a lot with a lot of the math problems we'll be doing. Another word we're going to talk about is adjacent. Adjacent is a word that typically just means next to. That's the way I like to think of it. It says here that two angles are adjacent if they share a common vertex, meaning a common point, a common side, and they don't overlap. I like to think of the word adjacent as being neighbors. When two angles are adjacent to one another, they are neighbors. They are right next to each other. In this case, 2 and 3 are right next to each other, so they're adjacent. They're neighbors. 1 and 2 are adjacent. 1 and 4 are adjacent. If you notice 2 and 4, those are not adjacent. They are not next to each other. Those are vertical angles, 2 and 4. All right, as we saw up here. So you got to make sure you understand the difference between vertical angles and adjacent angles. Vertical is when they are opposite from each other, when they are across from each other. Adjacent is when they are next to each other. Okay, taking a look at an example on page 74. You can name an angle by its vertex and by its points. And in this example, they want you to name the angle shown at the right and classify it as acute, right, obtuse, or straight. Okay, now if you notice through the example, they show you how they use the vertex to name the angle. Okay, a couple different ways. All right, if you notice X, Y, Z, the Y is in the middle. They also can name it Z, Y, X. It doesn't really matter as long as we have that Y, that vertex, in the middle. That's the really, really important thing. You know, it makes it easy if you just name the angle by the vertex. You can do that. We can just call this angle Y, and if it's numbered as it is here, we can just call it angle 1. Last but not least, since the angle is less than 90 degrees, it is an acute angle. So in the example, we've named the angle in several different ways and classified the type of angle that it is. Let's just go ahead and do some examples. You may want to pause the screen for a minute or two and then review these. Do them on your own and then review them. For letter A, we could name this angle ABC, angle CBA. We could just name it angle B or angle 2. Okay, so you can see as long as the vertex is in the middle, that's the most important part when you're naming these angles, you're okay. When I look at letter B, I'm just going to write them down here so I have more room. We've got angle RST, angle TSR, angle S, or we can call it angle 3. Like I've been saying before too, the big part here is that, look what's in the middle, S, 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 okay? That vertex is very important. That is how we typically name our angles. Last but not least, and I did forget to classify this angle. What kind of an angle is this? Right, it's an obtuse angle because it's more than 90 degrees. All right, moving on to our last example, letter C. I can already tell that's a straight line, at least it appears to be, so it's a straight angle, and we'll get to that in a moment. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We still need to name this. We can name it angle LMN, angle NML. We can name it simply by its vertex, which here is going to be M. I know that because it's in the middle. While it is a straight angle, if you think about it, think about these as two rays that are coming together at vertex M, and it still fits that definition. We can also name it angle 4. And this is, as we said before, a straight angle. I do believe I forgot to name angle A here. This is a right angle. Okay. All right, we're going to stop it here, let you practice a little bit, and then move on.